All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Brian Stelzer. I am the Assistant Director for Sport Programs at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Tonight, we do not have Nick Brigatti here. He is, again, coming back from Europe, and so he has left this to me to lead and present and everything else. So I'll try to do him justice when we close this thing out. But once again, we are here for today. My presentation is on evaluations and grading. So my intent is to kind of share some of my experiences, both as a grader as well as an official myself. So with that, let me get this into present mode and we'll move on. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody from the audience, or a simple verbal yes, I can see this, before I get really rolling?
I can see it.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so once again, this is Evaluations and Grading. My name is Brian Stelzer, and this is the idea here for me is to bring some of our NIRSA philosophies into the NCAA. So game plan for tonight, we're going to kind of talk about my background a little bit. I want to put some words to what the NIRSA philosophies even mean, or at least what they mean to me. We'll talk a little bit about what is grading in the NC2A at the moment, or at least my experiences in it. Talk about what interaction and impact that has on our officials nowadays, including myself, and then kind of talk about some NIRSA differences and what I would like to propose as what we do for the future. Okay, so a little bit about me. This is I like to talk about, especially things like this, what lens I am coming from. So I've been officiating in college football for about 8 years. I've been in the NIRSA profession for 12 years as a professional, which is crazy to me to think that. I started as a student at the University of Nebraska in 2007. I grew up in NIRSA. I got familiar with football and everything about officiating through my NIRSA experiences, my regional tournaments that I've gone to. I forget any now. This group was formed by a bunch of us NIRSA professionals. I have no idea if we're all still NIRSA professionals, but kind of that student development of officials in the intramural sports setting was very near and dear to my heart. And so I have tried to include that in everything that I do as I move forward. Currently, I do grade in 2 different conferences, the Great Plains Athletic Conference, which is everywhere from South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. And that's in NAIA. I also do the JUCO Kansas Jayhawk Community Colleges Conference a little bit here and there. So I do grade some of the what I would call introductory levels. These are first year college officials in a lot of cases, and so I think that also is important to the lens that I'm going to provide, because I think sometimes, especially as we move up in officiating, we lose sight of that kind of teaching aspect of pieces, and so that's very much, again, near and dear to my heart. Currently, I am a Division II referee in the MIAA. Been doing that. This will be going on my 4th year as a referee in that league. So that's a little about me, a little where I'm coming from, why that this may come off, and how it might come off. Again, it's important to me to let everybody share their story, and I want you to know where it's coming from for me. So when I say NIRSA philosophies, what do I mean? I mean, we have these pictures on the side. I deliberately pulled these off the NIRSA website. These are students going out there learning, trying to figure things out. Have no idea in a lot of cases what they've done. Sometimes it's first time ever putting on stripes. So part of that for me, kind of one of the NIRSA philosophies that I really want to try to impart to us, and I think we've heard it at a lot of camps. I've heard it at a lot of camps, is remember, it's about the journey, right? When I first came in as a student official, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just out there to kind of officiate the sports. I enjoyed it. I found out that regional tournaments were a thing. Was like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll give it a shot. And I got the opportunity to officiate at the national championships in New Orleans when I was a student, which was great for me at the time, because they managed to put it right at the New Year's Eve time. New Orleans and New Year's Eve kind of goes well together. But it was all about that. I had no like aspirations of I had to be a national championship official. I just was, and that's something that I hope to bring back to my journey as it is now. I think in my past that I have like sometimes forgotten where I'm at, and just enjoying the fact that I've been in Division II, not at all humble of us, but what the MIAA says is the premier conference in America when it comes to Division II athletics. Like we are the premier football conference. Just being a part of that is a good thing, and trying to remember that in the moment. So again, a NIRSA philosophy that I hope we all kind of bring to not just evaluations and grading, but just overarching, remembering that that's part of it, and grading is also part of that. It's about student development. So um, again, I grade at levels that have people that have never worked a game of college football in their life. And so I want to make sure that that's a part of not only my grading, but then also what I do with my guys that are in the Division II level that have gotten there because they've earned it. They've worked so a year, 2 years, 3 years, multiple years of college football. There's still something for all of us to learn. And if we continue to take the evaluations and grading from that perspective, it makes our lives so much easier, so much better, because we tend I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we tend to lean towards the did I get it right, and that's all that matters. And it's much more about what is your growth journey. I've heard my own supervisor say it's less about the mistake you made and how you got past it. What did you do after that mistake? That tells more about the official, and that's again something that we really try in our student development side of things, was trying to get students to focus on one or two things at a time, which again is the next piece. Like rather than trying to get a new official, especially at the lower levels, to get every single rule correct, every position, a side judge needs to know what the referee or center judge is doing. Most of the time, they can barely figure out their own position. And so focusing on one or two things they can continue to compound and build on. One of the camps I went to with Mike DeFee, one of his quotes was stacking years. It's not about having a good year, it's about stacking them together. Well, that starts by stacking your talents. So with one or two things at a time, and then you stack them together, and all of a sudden you become a really high quality official. So bringing that kind of into play as well. In my experience, I've seen this both as an evaluator in the NIRSA side of things, also in conference calls with other officials. Tone matters. And if we take it as a lens of, okay, here's what I heard, this is probably where I think you were going, rather than shutting somebody down in the moment and saying, you're absolutely wrong, how dare you. I personally have had that whoa moment, and I'm like, wait a second, I thought I was on the right path. And so when we're having a conversation, really using it that way as peer to peer, or at the very least making sure that we're not in a condescending tone, whether it's written evaluations or in personal feedback and conversation like these, it matters. And that's again something that we take for granted at the student level, because they don't know what they're doing, and so we give them that much more grace and latitude. And so my thing is, like, when we talk about this in the NCAA, is giving ourselves that same kind of grace, that same kind of latitude, to allow ourselves to do that learning as we move on and move up and move forward. The other side of this, me being in education and being an educator, and I'm working with my summer camp children that are in 1st through 6th grade. I tout this regularly. Praise the good as much or more than you do the errors. Kids thrive on getting compliments and knowing that they're doing things right. They're much more apt to continue doing those correct things if you pat them on the back. We as officials are just grown-up children, I would argue anyway, so that if we can praise those things that we're doing well, we can then critique and get those other pieces fixed, so that we continue again to build on those pieces back to back. When I came up learning, it was the Oreo of love: give them something good, give them something to work on, and then give them something good again. I'm not necessarily saying we have to follow that particular model of critique and evaluation, but it is something I think that gets lost in the current evaluation system as we have it within the NC2A, because we focus so much on the what do I need to fix, and not what we're doing right. And again, I think that's something that, whether it's in your own personal group where you're doing video evaluations and you have your Google Doc that you're all adding comments to, or if you're actually grading like I get the opportunity to do, is making sure that you find those opportunities to pat people on the back. So kind of moving into that, that's the NIRSA system as I see it. And then I want to compare that to the current system and culture again as I see it within the NC2A. Right off the bat, most of the time when we look at it, we're talking about downgrades. Most of us that have been in it long enough, hear nothing about anything other than what downgrades did you get, right? Just the nature of that term is is negative, and so it flips it from that NIRSA side of things. Let's talk positive, let's talk growth, to what did you do wrong, right? Downgrades is very much a part of our system. We don't talk about the correct calls as much as anything else. We talk about what downgrades did you get, what did you do wrong. In a proprietary system, because it is trademarked and everything else. If you're in that system, you know what you're doing. You're probably like MIAA. This isn't proprietary. It uses quick ref, so there's that, as well as other areas. You might use a different system. So I've been in others where so that one uses a 1 to 8 scale as to whether you're doing it right or wrong. I've been in another system that was entirely Excel based, that somebody else had created, where your correct call got zeros, and if you had something that you'd done wrong, those were all minuses. And if you got something that was incredible and like, how did you get that? You got your pluses. So as you can imagine, in that system, you almost never had a positive score. You were just trying to get as close to zero as possible. That's the kind of system that I look at and go, that's not the message that I think we could be putting out there, to make sure that we're having a good system. Like, let's talk about what we're doing well. Let's get more of those instead of zeros. Let's see how many pluses we can get. And you got it right. Zero is for, in the other system, like just for comments, like leaving it there so that like there is no grade attached, just something to think about, right? So there's that piece that is out there. In my experience, both as a grader and being graded throughout the years, I've been graded for 8 years now, through the quick press system. The correct no calls, the CNCs, are relatively few and far between. Again, that's just a system of, we're not in a habit of saying, hey, good job, that could have fooled you and you didn't call it, right? That's a good job. That's as much an important piece as saying, nope, that your threshold wasn't good enough, you should have called that. And nope, your threshold wasn't good enough, you should not have called that. We need to hone in with those. Yeah, this looked funky, you didn't call it, good job, needs to be in there as much as anything else. Even if you as the official didn't put it in there as a special, as we sometimes do, and say, hey, grader, take a look at this. So again, it's just advocating for that. That's not something that's currently happening. My supervisor of officials, Phil Laurie, in the MIAA, at just about every camp or clinic I've been at with him for our camps in the MIAA, has had this line where it's like, you go to a game, you're feeling good, your buddies have been texting you throughout the game, and almost all of them are saying, oh yeah, how was your game? And when they're doing that, they're really asking, what did you screw up? What went wrong in your game? I don't care about what went right. Like, I want to know how you messed up, or what quirky things happened. Again, that's a culture and a system that's in the NCAA that kind of really focuses on the negative side of things. And again, if we're trying to look at this from a NIRSA perspective, how do we again flip that script and get it into a, let's talk positive, let's get us into a better spot. In another system, again, I'm gonna give credit to the camp I was at. It was in Dallas for the CFODC, and Mike DeFee said his own staff calls it Bloody Wednesday. In that proprietary system, the supervisor comments show up in red, and so when they come out and you have red after red after red after red after red, like every comment turns red. I mean, it can be really, really disheartening. Just the color of the text can sometimes make that piece. And then again, you get this piece where like, oh my goodness, what have we done wrong? Bloody Wednesdays are coming. What am I going to have on my sheet? And that's why I have the red F there in the corner. Like, this is very much a part of the culture right now in the NCAA, is to focus on those bad things, and it can be really challenging. So the last piece I'll put in before I talk about like what can we do and how can we move this thing forward. I have a couple of different stories that I want to share. One is not mine, and one is mine personally. The one that isn't mine, a Division I college football official, really close friend. He's shared my story, he said I could share his. I'm not going to disclose his name. The important piece is he was at a game at San Jose State, and he had a family vacation planned afterwards. As part of that game, there was a call that he did not make that he knew after watching the film was a bad one. Like, he needed to have gotten it, and he was beating himself up over it. His story then goes on to say that he and his wife had planned all of this good, visiting national parks and everything else, and it ruined his week. He could not have fun on that vacation after his game. He couldn't focus on anything other than the what's going to happen on that Tuesday or Wednesday when his grades came out. Are we going to get fired? Are we going to do that? Like that's very much a part of the game as it stands. And the higher you move up in officiating, the more difficult that gets. And so again, mental health is a part of this as well. So that obviously he is still working in Division One, still very successful, has worked multiple bowl games. This was relatively early on in his career, but it's there, and that's something that we all have to come with and deal with. And again, from an educator's perspective, I see that now in our students that these mental health stories are affecting them and they're affecting us. We're just not necessarily willing and open to put that out there. So my story, my personal story, and the one that I want to share. I feel that pull. I feel that the requirement that you have to do anything and everything for football, or you're not doing enough. From me and from how I grew up, I'm the fourth of five kids. I was always the good kid. I wanted to get straight A's. I love my mother. So this was not like detrimental. But her line when I walked out the door every day was study hard, get all A's. So I wanted to. I was the good kid. I got mostly straight A's in high school. I fell off a little bit in college, but she wasn't there. But I was the perfectionist. I wanted to do well. I would follow the rules. I wouldn't break them. I was the good son. And so that translated into my football officiating. And just this past year, I was at one of our staff clinics, and I had gone out to have dinner with a couple of other officials. One of them had just quit his job, and we were all just kind of being together, enjoying time, and just said, you know what, dinner's really optional. They don't really need us. They hadn't said they needed us for anything. And I got a call about midway through dinner and said, hey, can you come back? We want you to sing the national anthem. And I said, what? For what? Like, well, can you be here? I was like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And then wasn't until 30 minutes had gone by. We'd still left. We were still enjoying our dinner time together. And I'd gotten 3 or 4 phone calls. And by the time we left an hour or so later, I'd gotten phone calls from darn near the entire staff. When we got back, I was there and just distraught because I was feeling that pressure to perform, to be there, to do what we were doing. And the entire just about the entire group said, was making it sound like I was in trouble. And those are the kind of mental health things that again, I was distraught. I put on a good face in the moment, but it was tough. And we unknowingly, like multiple apologies came in after this. But my point is, like I was pretty down and it was hard. And we do that to each other unknowingly. We have no idea what we're doing. We just think we're being funny. We're adding things on between the grades and the pressure to perform, and sometimes our desires just to move up. I'm not shy about saying I would like to work in Division One football someday. I want to make sure that I'm the rule follower. I'm doing what the supervisor asks. That can be really challenging, and adding that into the evaluation system is still adding still more pressure to ourselves and to others. And so again, my hope, my goal for this is to talk about how can we make this difference for people in the future so that they either are going through mental health and we can help them through them. Because again, I had fellow officials that were there for me. They brought me to the pat on the back and saying, you know what, it's going to be okay. We'll talk to Phil. We'll smooth it over. We'll be okay. And everything was fine. We're moving on, and it was great. But we need to be there for each other, and that's what I'm kind of advocating for. So the next piece, I'm going to talk about how can this translate, right? How we have the stories. I've talked about NIRSA and how it's student development focused. Let's focus on the positive. Talked about the current systems that are very much into the negatives and put pressure to perform and every other piece. So I'm going to show you a couple of plays that I've graded personally that I think lend credence to this side of things. How can we use this as we move forward, again, in either your own personal Google or in your grading if you choose or have the opportunity to do so. So pull that up quick. So 2 plays here. They're both kick plays because everyone knows those are our favorites. We get to do them oh so often, and nothing bad happens in a kick play. So this is the very first play of the game, play 1, opening kickoff. And I'll play it. You'll see the captions pop up, kind of give you an idea, and then I'll show you exactly how I graded it or chose to grade. Okay, so here's your first grade, first foul, offsides on the. And here we have the grab and yank. At the very least, a talking point. I won't get into is this a horse collar tackle? Is it not? But certainly when I'm grading, this was worth a talking to. All right, as I'm grading it. So we'll talk about that. And because it only shows up on this angle, I'm going to scoot forward a little bit. This is our man with a brick in his hand. So we got returner clearly has the ball, and then we have our legal blindside block here. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in this play. Again, this is the KJCCC. This is the Junior College Conference. Several of these officials I know personally, as well as I know that several of them had not worked any college football in their life. This was the last game of the season. They had an entire season of work to do, of looking at it, but what can they do to kind of learn from that? Right. So the traditional response could be just like, hey, get better, right? My counter to that is instead of having short words, instead of having the one piece, say, all right, this was a foul, you missed it, and then leaving it at that. I like to talk philosophies. Okay, so play one, a couple of players trying to be offside in the kick. Good to talk philosophy. Be ready for that opening kick. You never know. Umpire L4 has a foot down, 1 yard beyond the line. This is enough for the offside. Compare that to the other side, for the back judge who had one that still hadn't come down. Long kick, far enough. Your side's okay. This side's not. Compare those two, maybe use those to learn from it, right? My hope is that you would agree that has a little different tone than we have to get better and make these get these obvious fouls. Like that's sometimes the tone we get in our evaluations and grades, whereas this can show you, well, what can you do to get better, right? Similarly, that blindside block that I chose, I didn't put the horse collar tackle comment in here, but center judge, we missed the blindside block because it is one. And then I think you missed this because you moved your path over to the right where the ball is going rather than where the blocks are forming. If you stick to the middle and where shade to, and I think you picked this up. So thinking about that and looking at those grades, again, I hope you would agree that is much more constructive and focuses on what you can do differently. Again, like when you're looking at grades, not just hey, that you missed this block over here is where are you looking? Where are you moving? Again, my comment here for the center judge was very much on the watch where he moves when the play goes, and we see the blocks are forming in this space, and he goes over to the right. If instead of going to the right hash, we go to the left hash, I think we see this guy coming through and very much pick this up, as opposed to moving us into officiating space. So that's one play, one way that you can maybe add some flavor of the NIRSA philosophies into your own officiating world. Second play that I have for you, another kick play. A little more straightforward. Again, another blindside block, but this is more of a rules test question. Okay, so this is our man. This is the person going to foul. So clearly a blindside block. We have a loose ball. Okay, so officials on the field ruled that the blindside block occurred during the loose ball. And we have it recovered. We're marking it at the 12-yard line for the return team. So looking at this, I didn't pull up the next play. Well, this group of officials enforced this penalty, and we next snapped the ball on the 6-yard line. Okay, 6-yard line is where we next snapped this ball. And so how do we deal with this as a grader? We have a correct call because it's clearly a blindside block, but the entire crew now needs to say, Okay, did we enforce that penalty correctly? And we did not. So pulling that back, play back up. Here was my comment to them. Great job locking in on the player with the intent to make contact, correctly making this forcible contact as a foul. Whether we ruled it as during the loose ball or during the run, enforcement spot's the same. So here's the rule reference. Running play includes the loose ball until someone recovers. Here's the enforcement spot into the related run with no neutral zone. And again, recognizing these are people that have not worked that much college football. It's a tough test question. One we need to learn is as we enforce it from the recovery spot. So again, a little different tone. I'm hoping to praise the good, add a little bit on there. Don't just leave it as we got the correct call. We all need to do penalty enforcement and know the rules and leaving it at that. We need to add more to that and have more pieces in there. So that is that's from an evaluation and grading perspective. I would hope that if you again are grading yourselves or grading others, you can add more to it than just focusing entirely on did we get that call right? Did we get that call wrong? Yes, no, no comments. No, how do you get better? No, hey, you did a great job on this play in this case, or pieces of that. So again, this is just a little piece of how I was. This is where I chose to do this presentation entirely based on my experience over the last year. And I'm hoping that just kind of by talking through it, it maybe has given you some questions or thoughts. But that is the end of the presentation section of this. I am more than willing to take any questions or comments from the group at this point.
Brian,
Yes.
Seth, what's going on, man?
Hey, Seth.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good, real good. Um, if I may, I don't have a question for you. I just want to make a comment. I just want to applaud your construction criticism. I think as a grader that was phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing that. I've had to both sides of the coin when it was constructive and when it was not. And I love it, man. I love your approach. I just felt like it necessary to let you know that I think you're doing the right thing. It's very helpful. It teaches a lot, and I think it speaks volumes to your character. So well done.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate that.
Hey, Brian, I have a question.
Sure, Mark.
Do you ever get any, I wouldn't say pushback, but a professional disagreement where the official on the field sees it one way and the film uh, says another thing, and let's just say it's poor film?
Mhm.
What do you normally do in that situation?
That's a great question. I think it'll depend a little bit on two sides. For if it's a crewmate that we experience the same game, I will have a much different lens and way we talk through that. Because like you said, we may have bad film. We know what we saw on the field. And if I know in my heart of hearts that it was the correct call, we did the right thing in that moment, that can be a part of the conversation as well. If it's purely I'm the grader and I got to go, well, I believe you. I believe that's what you saw. Perhaps your foul description could use some work. And so I can see with the bad film, like, oh, okay, maybe I can go with you if you had described it this way. Right. And maybe that's the conversation that you have with that person. But if the film shows that they're just wrong, I mean, then it's okay, walk me through your process. How did you get there? Where's the disconnect here? Are you calling this a hold because you saw him go outside the frame? Is that all you're latching onto and you're saying it's a hold no matter what? Or are we trying to or did you see that twist action? Did you see something that took it from a grab to a grab and restrict, and kind of talking through those sides of things? Ultimately people can, especially with fouls, they get dead set on that is or isn't, and then it's like, hey, I'm trying to help you. If you don't want the feedback, by all means, I think you're going to get more incorrects if you keep continuing working the way that you are. But ultimately, people have to make the beds they sleep in the beds they make. So that's why would be my two pieces. Again, different depending on whether you're the grader or a crewmate. But great question. Thanks, Mark.
Brian, this is Matthew. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Matt, what can I do for you?
Oh, okay. So here's like with the game that you just had where there were only two cameras and you have an official, especially a young official, that makes a correct ruling on the field as a targeting. But looking at the two and only two camera views that have players in the way doesn't necessarily show maybe the crown of the helmet or any other indicator. How do you talk through or talk to that official and say, you've got two other officials that agreed with you, but the video's coming back, not like confirming that it is a targeting. And then it goes to the commissioner and they look at it and say, we don't see anything. And it gets switched over. How do you handle that and say, I want you to still call that, even though the video doesn't show that?
Yeah. I think from a replay perspective nowadays, it's really nice in the leagues, at least in the JUCO league, they can review that in the moment. So that is very much a, if you're in the heart of if your heart of hearts says that's a foul, I need that to be targeting, like put your flag down and let's go look at it. Like if you get it wrong, you get it wrong after that. But at least let's go do that for the junior college. Now that's not what we do in the MIAA. We can and do review every targeting, but our philosophy isn't quite the same because we recognize that we have such marginal video. So we do try to rely on the other sides of things. And so the key is, for my boss anyway, and that's part of what I would say is you have to know what your supervisor needs and wants. My supervisor in the MIAA says, um, if in doubt or if there's no film, then the call on the field stands. And so we're very much more reticent to put our flags on the ground and just look at everything, which kind of feels like, no offense to the Division I people in the group, but you kind of throw your flag on everything because it gets because every play gets looked at regardless, right? We don't have that luxury. If I throw my flag and I don't have the film, and this happened in our league where like literally there was no film, there was not a bad angle, it was just nothing. And so because we had literally nothing to look at, we had to stick with targeting. Once we finally got the huddle back, it was very clearly not, and so we could reverse it after the fact, which wasn't as good, right? So if you have the film, if it's bad, and you're like, okay, we're going to pull this because we can't confirm it, that's okay. You did what was right. Especially if you have one of those leagues that is going into instant replay and can look at it in the moment. If you have three officials that look at that and go, that's targeting, we want that to be reviewed and we want that to go to that film. And if you can't confirm it, great, at least you looked at it, right? And that's again a new learning point, especially for us in the lower levels, Division II and below, that we need to start talking about that. What does your supervisor want, and what is the overarching thought process on, should we throw a flag and look at it as much as we can, or should we be on no, let's make sure it's really targeting before we potentially take a kid out of a game that couldn't or shouldn't have been, right? So I talked around it a little bit. Long and short of it is, do what your supervisor wants and understand what your supervisor wants, especially with replay. If you think it's a target, throw your flag and just be okay with the consequences afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, as the educator, I count to 7 to 10, and when I hear nothing, that's when usually my cue to move on. So I'm more than happy to end the recording and talk with anyone else after this if you would like to continue talking evaluations and grading or anything else in general. But that's the end of the formal presentation tonight. I would be doing a disservice if I did not remind you all that this is a regular meeting. Our next presentation is Michael Frayne is going to present on getting off on the right foot, how to start your season strong. That is on the 29th, same bat time, different bat channel. He has his own Zoom link that Nick will most certainly send out. And then after that is August 12th with Nick Brigatti. He's going to lead some penalty enforcement as we get ready for the season. So as always, there's plenty of time in there. As you can see, there are spaces later in the year. Sometimes we reserve those for in season. Let's talk about the plays we've had up to that point. But if you will want to present, please do take the time to visit this spreadsheet and sign up for it. Other than that, appreciate you all being here. Appreciate you all taking the time to come in and learn one way or another. So again, thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the questions. If you have any questions for me later on, shoot me an email, let me know. I will drop my email in chat, but thank you all for being here, and I'm going to stop the recording now.